Good. Good afternoon, and welcome to this Roots into Languages webinar on becoming a teacher of modern languages. You'll no doubt be aware that there is a shortage of language teachers in the country at both primary and secondary level. In this session, we want to tell you something about how to become a teacher of modern languages, and we want to highlight the rewards, the challenges, and the excitement of this profession. My name is Elizabeth Andersen, and I'm the director of the Roots into Languages North East Consortium, which is based in the School of Modern Languages at Newcastle University. I'd now like to introduce the members of this webinar panel. First of all, René Koglbauer, who is head of the School of Education at Newcastle University. René.
Hello, I'm Rene. I've arrived in this country in 1999 as a modern foreign language assistant. Spent about 10 years in secondary teaching as a language teacher before I moved into higher education, focusing on teacher training up here in Newcastle. I'm also currently the president of the Association for Language Learning, which is the subject organization that language teachers in this country join. We've got 4,500 members, and we work with the members, but also at policy level, very closely with the government.
Thank you, René. And now I'd like to move to Helena Butterfield, who is the curriculum leader for modern languages at St. Michael's Catholic Academy in Billingham. Helena.
Hi, yes, I'm Helena, and I'm curriculum leader for modern languages in Billingham at St. Michael's. I've been teaching languages for 21 years. In various schools. I teach French and German here at St. Michael's, and I've also done a little bit of teaching Spanish in one of my previous jobs as well.
Thank you, Helena. Next up is Karl Reed, who is a former student of the School of Modern Languages at Newcastle and also a former Roots into Languages student ambassador. Karl is now a postgraduate student training to be a teacher. Karl.
Hi, yeah, I think that you said it all, Liz. For my year abroad, I'd just say that I worked as a teacher in France and then I studied in Spain. Also, just finishing first half term now of teacher training, and my languages are French with Spanish. So yeah.
I bet you're glad of half term.
Definitely.
And finally, Erika Corradini, who is the manager of the Roots National Networks for Interpreting and Translation. Erika.
Yes, thank you, Liz. I am based at Roots into Languages National at the University of Southampton. And my role today, well, I'm not a teacher of languages, but my role today will be that of taking questions from the audience and feeding them to Liz and the other panelists. So I think we should start now with the first question, which I will read out for you. Is it essential to have work experience in a school to apply for a PGCE, School Direct, Teach First?
René, I think this is maybe a question for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Erika. Erika, as you rightly pointed out, there are various routes into teaching, and you've alluded to that already. So there's the PGCE, there's School Direct, there's Teach First, and there's also the School Direct salaried route, which is for those people who have got experience already and in a different field of work and want to basically retrain as teachers. All four programs, what is common for all four programs is that they are basically a minimum of 120 days spent in schools. And to answer your precise question, yes, having work experience at least a few days or up to a week, more current experience would be very helpful. Partly it might be just observations, it might be shadowing some language teachers. And why is it important? Because you need it also for your interview. Most interview situations will require that people can reflect on the recent school experience in England, and that's quite important because a lot of candidates will have some experience during their year abroad. So it's about to be able to reflect on the recent knowledge, their experience in schools, but also through the interview they should be able to show and demonstrate the ability to reflect. And I think Karl it might be worth you just coming in here to mention a few things about what your experience was with regards to school experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to also say that the most important thing, I think, is that the potential trainee teacher has that experience of being in the school, so that they know for a fact and that they're under no illusions what it could be like, because everyone's been to school and everyone has their own experiences, whether good or bad, and you could go into a school and have a completely different experience to the one you actually went through in school. So I think it is, if not essential, it is absolutely very, very important that you do it and try to get it in a variety of schools. I personally tried, through written languages, I really got a lot of experience in different schools, but I also went above that and tried to go into a school that maybe I hadn't had an experience of. It was a sports college, it was something different. I think it's really important to see different styles of teaching, different teachers, and yeah, so it's definitely important. I also just would say on that, I think languages graduates are in a really good position to get the experience. For example, I taught a little bit on my year abroad. Some people can go in and do the British Council, so there's a lot of different avenues you can pursue as a language graduate to get that experience necessary.
Karl, which of those routes did you choose to become a teacher? Which is the strand that you're on?
I chose the school direct route.
And why did you choose that one?
For me, the school direct route was more sort of vocational. It was more directly into the school. I applied to the school so I could effectively pick the school that I wanted to be in. And the PGC seemed to focus more on the theory of it, which obviously is important, but for me, I wanted to be more hands-on. In actual fact, PGC and school direct route are only marginally different, so you get both the practical and the theory on both.
Is there anything more you'd like to say there, Rene?
Yeah, I think what's just worth mentioning at this stage is that sometimes when people apply for school direct, they also need to be prepared that they might be asked during the interview to actually teach a sequence, and people might observe them teaching a group of 10 or 15 pupils. So having a bit of experience of what current language teaching looks like through observations and the school experience will help them also to think very carefully about how they should be structuring that sequence. I don't know whether Karl had to teach anything during his interview.
No, I didn't have to teach anything. No, thankfully.
Rene, is it possible to apply to more than one of these routes into teaching, or can you apply, or are you only allowed one?
No, you can apply to all. Basically, Teach First is different, but all the other routes you can apply through the UCAS application form, and you could, for example, choose one school direct school route, and then the other two places for PGC with two different universities, or two school direct different schools and one university. So you've got a maximum of 3 to choose from.
Aha, great, thank you. I think maybe we can move on to our next question. Erica?
Yes, I've got a question about the typical day of a language teacher in a secondary school. What's it like?
Helena, that has to be yours.
Yeah, well, I was trying to think how best to describe it, because I think that teaching is one of those jobs where every single day is different, and sometimes what you think is going to happen is something completely different to what actually happens. So I thought I would just give an outline of how I kind of organise my day and how it's structured. So I actually get here at about 8 o'clock. Our school doesn't start till 5 to 9, our school day, but I get here just before 8 because I like to get my photocopying done and to check my emails and to send my emails when it's all nice and quiet. But there's lots of staff who don't arrive that early. In fact, I would say that I was an exception in arriving that early. Most staff arrive between 8 and 8:30. And we have a briefing before school starts. So it's a brief staff meeting about 20 to 9 where we're given important notices for the day. I work in a Catholic school, so we also have a prayer, and that might be something to think about if when you do your training and when you apply for jobs, do you want to work in a faith school, or do you want to work in a state school? Even if you're not a Catholic, I'm not a Catholic, but nobody kind of forces you to say prayers or what have you. But I think it's quite a nice community start to the day to have that time before the school day. We also, on one day a week, have a duty before school, because all of the rest of the staff are in a staff meeting. Obviously there's nobody around supervising the students if there's nobody on duty. So one day a week we have a duty before school, and we also have a duty at break time as well, which we do once a week, and a duty after school in the bus space to make sure that the students all get on the right buses and that nobody leaves without them, and that there's nothing worrying happening at the school gate, I suppose. So we start the day, we have tutor time, we have 15 minutes with our tutor groups, if we're tutors, which most of you will find that you are as a full-time teacher. It's quite rare not to have a tutor group. And it's 15 minutes at the start of the day. Most days of the week you'll be doing equipment checks, catching up with your class who you see every day. So I always see as my tutor as a bit like an extended version of my family, really, because I've got 30 little children there, and I'm just checking on their achievement, giving them praise if they've been given rewards, speaking to those who need speaking to if they've been given behaviour points for whatever reason, doing equipment checks, making sure they're ready for the day. Maybe because I feel like I'm the mum, I don't want them to get into trouble, so I might give them a pen if they don't have a pen, so they can end up at so they're not going through the whole day without having their equipment. We check the planners. The students have to get the planners signed every week, so we sign them as well to make sure that the parents are using them. And also, again, because we're a Catholic school, we have a prayer. Some days we have assemblies where the whole year group might go into the hall and have an assembly with a member of the senior management team. Some days we have an assembly with our head of year as well. I've only got to 9 o'clock and the story sounds like the day.
Yes, I was just thinking we'll have to speed the day up a bit.
I know, yes.
Are there any particular facets of the day that are particular to a language teacher?
Well, I think that languages teachers probably offer more clubs at lunchtime than some of the other departments. We have something going on in our department every lunchtime, but that might be just something that's specific to our school. So we have an Italian club, I've got a German class, we have after school clubs as well. Year 11s come after school. And then,
do you have a foreign language assistant?
Unfortunately, we don't have a foreign language assistant. We do have some sixth formers who we don't have a sixth form attached to our school, but we have a sixth form nearby, and sometimes we get students from the sixth form who ask if they can come back and do some support. So we've had students do that. And we also have a lady who is a French speaker who's come in and done some volunteering within the school as well, to support. So we do get support for our I suppose the speaking is what we use them most for, but unfortunately no, we don't have an assistant.
Yeah. Before we move on, how many languages again do you teach in your school?
We teach French and German at our school, and I teach both languages.
Right.
Just to follow up from what you just said, Helena, I just wonder if you have any thoughts or observations to make about the materials, teaching materials, which are available to language teachers. Are they easy to find? Would you want to have more, for example?
I actually think that there's quite a lot of material out there available for language teachers. We use a textbook. Some departments go down the route of not using a textbook and creating all of their own resources. We use a textbook, which means it's quite easy to get resources from there. It's all online. But there's also the Times Educational Supplement, their resources section if you're looking for something. There's also an MFL resources group that you can join where teachers can share their resources. There's an MFL teachers group on Facebook as well where people share resources, and Twitter is also a really, really, really good source of getting ideas, sharing ideas, getting support, and also sharing resources through that as well.
And there are quite a lot of, if I may come in, lots of projects happening at the moment with the new curriculum. So you would have It's very new website or wiki actually, where people have uploaded a lot about literature, and I can later on pass on the link to you so people can look at that. But it's basically looking at how can you include literature into your Key Stage 2, 3 and 4 lessons.
Yeah, I've had a look at that actually. There's some resources on there we're going to use, so that is a really useful wiki, yeah.
I think if I make one more point is, I think in some schools you still will find as a language teacher that you're also going to be asked to take responsibilities for trips and exchanges, and that is kind of a really, really positive. I mean, hard work, I would say, but from my experience, it was really kind of a rewarding experience when you take year sevens, 100 year sevens to Germany for the first time, and them trying out a few sentences they have got, and I think that's really a part of being a really rewarding profession.
Karl, could we just come to you on that? Does the school that you're placed with at the moment, do they have any particular exchange programs?
The school that I've just moved from to my first placement, they had a trip to Spain, and they took year 11s and sixth formers specifically, and they went to the south of Spain and tried flamenco dancing and went to the Alhambra and had a really great cultural trip. And also for the parents, they actually do a tapas evening to also get the parents on board, because it's equally as important to get the parents on board. So it all links in together, and it's great to expand the cultural awareness.
Erica, I think we could maybe move on to the next question.
Yes, we've got a question here. Are there any funding opportunities for language graduates embarking on teacher training?
Renee, I think this one's yours.
Okay, thank you. The good news is, yes, that there are various opportunities, but I think the most important one to mention is the government bursary, and that has just been increased quite considerably. So the government bursary is £25,000 at the moment for anyone who's got a first, a master's, a PhD, or a 2-1 in their undergraduate degree. And then if you hold a 2-2 degree, then you would be entitled to a bursary of £20,000. And that is on the PGC and the PGC school direct route. Salary is slightly different. So that's worth bearing in mind, I think. But it's also worth raising at this stage. It's for all languages, including community languages and ancient languages as well. If anyone of you are thinking of going down the primary PGC route with language, the bursary is slightly, well, considerably less, I would say. It's £3,000. That's the official information. The website worth looking out for is get into teaching at the government. So basically the easiest way is just put get into teaching into Google, and then you find that that website.
That's very encouraging, really, isn't it? I mean, really good prospects. It's showing that the government wants to invest in languages, which is a scarcity area, so the chances of employment are high, and the support that you're going to get, I think, particularly these days with the high tuition fees, is very welcome indeed. And
that's particularly kind of supporting the current policy as well, in terms of making languages more important in the curriculum again.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Erica, next one.
We've got another question coming in. Will only having studied one language mean I am at a potential disadvantage when it comes to applying for jobs?
Helena, how about that for you?
We've had applicants for jobs here who've had one language, 2 languages, 3 languages, and it doesn't really make that much difference to us. I think that if schools can be quite flexible in the languages that you can offer. So we advertised, for example, last year for a linguist, and we didn't actually specify the languages that we wanted them to speak, and we had applicants from a whole range of languages, and some of whom only had one language, and we interviewed those and appointed one, actually. So I don't think it's such a big problem as people might think it could be if you only speak one language. I think being able to offer two languages gives you some flexibility. So, for example, I can teach French and German both to GCSE, so that means that there's some flexibility there in the timetable. But I think as long as there are some people in the department who can do that, it doesn't have to be everybody who can do that. And I know that there are opportunities for people who can only offer one language when they start training to take up a second language or to build up a second language that they might have learnt in the past. And I think I know, Renee, I think you might have some information about that, don't you?
I think it's. I agree with you that you can actually make a career with just one language, but I think quite a number of schools, and if you look at the adverts last year, there was a high proportion who where head teachers and departments did ask for French being part of the offer. So where you would have German with French at least to Key Stage 3, because French is still the dominant and historically it has been the dominant language on offer. So it's easier. I mean, from a head teacher's perspective, head teachers would always say they would prefer an applicant who's got two languages at least up to Key Stage 4, just because it's much easier from the timetable perspective. But also, if another colleague goes on maternity leave or falls ill or whatever, so you're more flexible in order to cover that colleague. But there are, if you haven't got it yet, so for example, if you haven't got a French or a second language, then there are fully funded, or in most cases fully funded, subject knowledge enhancement programs available. Again, on the website that I've mentioned earlier, there is quite a lot of information about those. Depending on your needs, it will be wherever the provider, your ITT provider, will then say to you, well, you've got a conditional offer, but you need to complete an 8-week, a 12-week, or the longest is a 36-week program. Now, currently, there's no 36-week program available in languages, so don't worry, that's not likely to happen. But it's just worth thinking about that before the interview as well, so that you're aware that there might be a scope of actually improving your language skills, either upskilling or in some cases it might be starting from scratch. And I think that's quite a generous offer by the government again.
Perhaps I could just put in a bit of our own experience, because at Newcastle we run the German subject enhancement program, and we have done for about 8 or 9 years now. And I know that my colleagues teaching on that program enjoy it very, very much indeed, because they get very excited about how quickly a mature student can pick up another language. And I think if you have one language, then you know how to learn language. And I think it's very rewarding to see how quickly you can put all that knowledge into practice in working up a second language.
Could I just say,
yes,
on that point, of the people that I know this year at Newcastle doing the PGCE, there was 3 with just French, and then there was also 3 that did a subject knowledge enhancement, so it is quite common. Obviously, as we're saying, 2 languages are preferable, but you can do it with 1 and then do the subject enhancement.
Great.
And the good thing about the subject enhancement course, when people have been on those, they do say it's not just the upskilling of languages, but also they get the pedagogical knowledge and can take some of the ideas that the teachers use, transferred quite quickly into their own teaching as well. And that's another bonus.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think we could have another question, Erica.
Yes, this is perhaps for the teachers. What inspired you to become a language teacher?
Helena.
I think it was my own language teacher at school, actually. My language teacher when I was at school, she was absolutely fantastic. teacher, and I learned a lot from her. And I think that I wanted to model myself on the kind of teacher that she was. And then when I knew that I wanted to be a languages teacher before I even left school. I was really enjoyed my languages. My mum was a teacher. And I just think that being able to inspire the next generation of linguists and being able to encourage them and give them the opportunities that I've had, and more opportunities than I've had, is really what it's all about.
Karl, you're the most recent recruit, as it were. What prompted you to go into teaching?
For me, I wasn't that interested in teaching until I started to do Roots into Languages, which I did started in the first year of my degree, and just going into schools and seeing how kids can respond to languages, usually very enthusiastically, when we're going in and telling them how great they are. It really made me appreciate how great languages were, now like how it's such a special subject for us. Yeah, also that just doing a bit of teaching in France as well, I think it's really a great subject that we should promote, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't teach in a school, I teach at university level, but when I first went off to university I intended to do English. I had no intention of doing languages at all, but as things turned out, I eventually went into French and then finally into German. And when I look back and think of all that followed from that, with regard to the contacts overseas and the people I met and my colleagues, and this would be the same at school level if you have exchange programs, and that just widened things so much and made things so much more exciting. And I think that's something that languages have which other subjects don't have. Renee, how about yourself? Because you came as a language teacher first to this country.
I mean, I had planned to become an English teacher over in Austria, and as part of that I came over for a year, well originally a year, and then it turned out to be about over 15 years now, into this UK to basically practice a bit of this English teaching, and ended up teaching quite a lot of German. And I think it's at lower level, like year 7s or nowadays primary, it's just kind of seeing how quickly learners actually want to experiment with the language, and I think that's really exciting when you can suddenly go to October half term and they are able to hold a conversation in German, French, or Spanish, for example. But then I think if I think back of my teaching at A level, the quality of some of our A-level students is fantastic, and I think that's one of the elements that I keep saying we need to kind of shout about the successes much more of the this country has actually got some fantastic linguists coming out of schools. And you can do quite a lot with it, even if you've got other interests. I mean, I was quite interested in teaching mathematics as well, and the school one day just asked, could you teach year 7 maths from next year? And I said yes, and we basically taught math through the medium of German to a bottom-set year 9 group, and it was fantastic. So it's these elements that you can bring in and combine your personal interests very easily with your job as well.
Great, thank you. Erika, have we another question?
Yes, on that point that Renee has just touched upon, if you have a foreign teaching qualification, can you teach in a UK state school, or do you have to retake a British one?
Renee, I think that's you.
Yeah, so if you, in my case, I still had to take the, what was then a short version of a teacher training program. Things have changed. If you actually qualified in Europe, so in one of the European Union countries, you can, as a teacher, you can actually transfer the qualification into UK, or at least in English and Welsh qualification. So you can actually start as qualified teacher here. It's a bit of a paperwork, and you need your certificates translated, etc., but it is possible.
Great.
And as I can see from, because of this teacher shortage, even welcomed.
Yes, I can imagine.
Also, following on from that, we've got another question about state schools and independent schools. Which is better to teach in?
Whoa, loaded question.
I think
Let Helena start with that one.
I knew you were going to ask me that question first. I've never taught in an independent school, so I don't know what it's like to teach in an independent school. I enjoy the range of students in terms of ability and background in a state school, and from my own experiences, I think personally that the state schools that I've seen have better facilities and more up-to-date facilities than some of the independent schools that I've seen, my own children's, for example.
Thank you, Helen. What about you, Karl? I mean, you'll be applying for jobs later on this year. Would you go for the independent sector and state sector, or don't really mind, just where the job comes?
Where the job comes, yes, but I would much prefer to work in the state sector. I think that in the private sector it's potentially harder for language teachers to get a job, for me personally, because they always look for graduates that have much more experience of living in the country, whereas I have only lived in the country through my year abroad, so maybe I'm not the best linguist, as in I'm not as good as someone who's been living there for 5 years. However, I do think either way that for me the state school would be better. It's different pressures in each one. I can see maybe there's more parental pressure in the independent sector, whereas in the state sector it's much more the pupil potential behaviour, but I would be much more inclined to go for state schools.
Mm-hmm. I think it's known that the independent schools have maintained languages rather better than the state schools in many cases. Rene, have you got a comment to make about that, perhaps?
Yeah, we do know that for definite languages, particularly also up to A level, have been kept much more protected in most of the independent schools. That doesn't mean that they're not challenged. And I think we've heard a few points already. I think if someone is thinking about that question in more detail for their own kind of job choice, there are obviously the ideological questions, whether someone wants to teach in an independent sector or state sector. That's for them to decide. But I think I would always say that when you apply and go for an interview, it's not just them interviewing you, you also interview the school, and you then make a decision whether or not you feel comfortable in that setting during that interview. I think that's a really important part. I mean, when I came 1999, for about 2 or 3 years, I taught mainly in a state school, but 3 or 4 hours a week in a private school as well, a top private school, and yes, there were differences. There were differences in terms of expectations potentially. It wouldn't automatically mean that the ability was automatically different. Yeah, I think Helena has rightly so alluded that sometimes the resources are not as good in the independent sector because the focus is much more on in my experience, on swimming pools and things like that parents can see, rather than my photocopies as a resource. So the photocopying budget in the school was very, very small, because the my worksheet couldn't show much, but the swimming pool could, for example.
Yes, and I think there's one thing that I've observed, that having been asked to give talks at different events, that these days staff from independent schools and staff from state schools work together very closely, in fact. Modern languages have been in some decline in the state sector, in the school sector throughout, and also at university level. And I think in the modern languages community now, there's a very strong sense of solidarity, that these issues of what kind of school you're coming from are less important than they might have been maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I think Roots into Languages has done a lot in that regard to promote languages rather than the context in which the language is being taught. Erica, another question?
Yes, we've got a question coming in from Keela. How do you deal with different levels in the classroom?
Helena, I think this goes to you.
Well, I think that differentiation is a really, really important feature of any teacher's lesson. But I think it's also the biggest thing for me is having high standards and ensuring that all the students in the classroom know exactly what my standards are and ensure that they strive to meet them. What I have to then help them do is give them the tools with which to meet those standards. So that might mean that some students need some extra support, whether that be through me talking them through a task, or whether I give them a sheet that has a little bit more support on it for them, or whether that be that some of the students at the top end need some further extension and being given the opportunity to show what they can really do. What I tend to do is I tend to give support to those who need it in a lot of, for example, listening and reading exercises, and then if I was doing a writing exercise, I give a 3-tier choice of what the students should do, and I guide them towards where they should be. But I think that differentiation also comes through the questioning, targeting the students who can answer the more open-ended questions, targeting the students who can answer the more closed questions, and also giving praise wherever it's due. So somebody, a very able student who gives a very weak answer, you might not give them as much praise as a weaker student who gives a question, an answer to a question that's in a lot of detail, very high-level question. And I think all of those things come in to teaching a wide range of ability.
Mm-hmm. Rene, have you, as a teacher trainer, do you have any advice or guidance that you give in this regard?
Yeah, I think it's in languages quite an interesting one in terms of how this experience of our students in schools are, because some schools are still setting as well, and I think what sometimes happens is that people think because they are teaching a particular set, like a top set or bottom set, that means that's enough to basically just have a kind of blanket lesson in that sense. But even within the setting, it is really important to understand that actually there's still mixed ability there, where you've got people who you need to, I think Helena's point is a really, really important one. It's having high expectations, whether it is a bottom set group or a lower ability group or your top sets. I think, but it doesn't automatically mean, and I think that's the other message we need to be giving, is that we're expecting 30 different lesson plans, because we also need to think of teachers' workloads. But I think it's about, I would have always argue that it's about you getting to know your children, you getting to know your students and know where their strengths and weaknesses are, and then supporting them through questioning, comments, and the right activities.
Karl, how about you so far? What have you observed in this regard?
Yeah, I think just as Rene said, on the setting issue, even if they are in a set, you still gonna have to treat them as if they're mixed ability, so pushing the more stable but always giving support to maybe the weaker students in the class. In terms of setting, I've seen Key Stage 3 classes being set with science and with maths, which actually has obviously no impact on their linguistic ability, so you still have to differentiate and really work hard in those classes to push the most able students as much as you can. From my experience as well, most of the GCSE classes are mixed ability, so you have to, as I say, push the most able, but always be providing the support for those that maybe aren't going to get the best grades.
This sounds like really quite a challenge. Helena, how big would a languages class be at GCSE in your school?
At GCSE, we have a a maximum limit at GCSE of 25 in the class. However, most of our GCSE classes are somewhere between 15 and 23. I think my biggest class is 23, my smallest 30. So,
yes, so that sounds more manageable.
Yeah, but that is mixed ability. So there's students in there who will get A stars, there's students in there who'll get grade E's. But I also think it comes back. It's down to the feedback that you give them in their exercise books as well. So it's about making sure that the weaker students, when you give them the feedback in their exercise books and how they can make progress, making sure that they can access what you've told them that they need to do, and that they can understand what they need to do. But on the other hand, those more able students, making sure that you're still not just saying to them, or just keep working hard, that you're also giving them really clear guidance on what they can do to improve their work as well, because it's not always just keep working hard, even for those more able students.
I think that's the voice of the experienced teacher speaking. Erica, back to you for another question, please.
Yes. How does social media and technology help in teaching?
Karl, would you like to start with that one? I think I might have lost Karl. Helena?
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Sorry.
Yeah, I know now that there's a big presence on Twitter with the MFL Twitterati. So social media now playing much more of a bigger role in language lesson planning and language lesson interaction. I know that as well. A lot of teachers now use or permitted to use Twitter or sum things up in a tweet or things like that in the classroom, because technology is such a big part of, especially this, well, my generation now, even more so in this upcoming generation. I think that social media is going to play even more of a part, and it even is like the most basic thing of telling the students, well, you can change your Facebook into French, and then you've automatically boosted your French vocabulary by doing that, or you can follow a Spanish celebrity on Twitter and see what they're saying on Twitter. So even the most basic things like that, social media can really help.
I've always felt that with languages, you can be learning while you're enjoying it. You don't realize you're learning almost when you can get into those kind of areas. Helena, how about, what would your comments be on social media?
I think that as linguists, I think we're really in a really fortunate position now that there are so many opportunities for ourselves and for our students to have experience of authentic language by going onto the internet, by like Karl said, put your Facebook page into French, put your Facebook page into German, encouraging students to follow foreign celebrities on Twitter. We have a departmental Twitter account where students follow us, but we don't follow them back, so they can follow our updates, and I will retweet little snippets of language that I see that I think are important for them, making sure that the Twitter that I've retweeted hasn't got anything unsuitable in previous posts that they've got. So it can be a bit of a minefield. You do have to always be aware that we need to still be keeping our students safe online. But even through things such as that, there's so many websites now available for our students to use to enhance their language learning as well. So for GCSE students, there's websites for learning vocabulary, there's apps for learning vocabulary, there's websites for practicing the listening, which I always find a really, really hard skill to practice in the classroom, and particularly we were talking about differentiation earlier, to differentiate in the classroom, because some students need a little bit more time to hear and understand what a native speaker's saying, whereas others pick it up straight away. So I think that there's such a massive, massive potential that a lot of students, a lot of language teachers are using. And as Karl mentioned, the MFL Twitterati, there's hundreds of languages teachers out there who are using social media, who you can share ideas with, plan with, work together with, get support from.
Rene, are there sources for the people listening to the webinar today that they can go to find some of these resources?
Yeah, I mean, I think Karl and Helena have both referred to a number of those, like the Twitterati, etc. I think what we all find is it's very easy to actually follow one of the lists, and then you can see a kind of long list of resources. But there's the Association for Language Learning website that summarizes all resources, so it's worth having a look at that as well. I think just one example to make of one of the colleagues that I've been working recently with, who basically through Twitter got in touch with an Austrian artist because he used some of the poem structure that, in his Spanish lessons. He's an Austrian poet using Spanish poems in the lessons, and the Austrian poet then wanted to see some of the Spanish poems, and he has posted it on his website. It's these kind of engagement that actually learners can see that they are publishing for an audience, and that makes the kind of the work much more enjoyable, but also purposeful.
You're really getting another dimension into the classroom, aren't you? It's not just the teacher's voice and the teaching context within the school. It's a lot of extra that comes in easily. Yeah. Erica, next question.
Yes, what support networks exist for teachers beyond the MFL Twitterati?
Renee, could I start with you on that one?
Yeah, I think obviously the obvious one, I mean the obvious two, the obvious one is the Association for Language Learning, a membership organization for language teachers at all levels, all sectors. And there's also ISMALA, this is the Association for Language Teachers in the Independent Sector, who we're working with very closely. The Association for Language Learning is organized as a national organization with regional centers, branches, networks, primary languages hubs. So there are lots of local events, but also online events, webinars, as well as a national conference once a year, Language World Conference.
Great. Helena, is there anything else that you would want to add to that list?
I don't think so. I think Rene has mentioned a lot of the support networks there, but particularly the Association for Language Learning is a really big support nationally and locally. You might also find that secondary schools have within their local town or within their local city a network who meet regularly, or there might be a group of primary languages groups that meet with secondary colleagues as well to get support, and I think that they're also really useful to find out what's going on in your own area. We also, because I'm a Catholic school, what's it called, the Catholic Partnership of Hexham and Newcastle, I'm sure that there are others around the country as well. We meet regularly, the curriculum leaders of the schools in the Catholic Partnership meet regularly, and we also arrange activities for our students as well. And I'm sure that there are little hubs like that around the country where that also happens.
Karl, have you got sucked into anything in the couple of months that you've been in teacher training?
Not yet, but I must join ALL, Association for Language Learning. I keep meaning to do it, but I haven't done it yet. But there have been teach meets that have been going on as well, specifically for language teachers, and also specifically for newly qualified teachers and trainee teachers, which are all there to boost language teachers, basically.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what I'm hearing is that, you know, linguists are by nature gregarious, as it were, that communication is our thing, and it's not surprising then that there are so many opportunities to engage with other teachers. Erica, do we have another question?
We've got a question perhaps for Karl. What is the experience of the trainee teacher?
So I chose to do the school direct route over the COPE GCE. However, they are both very, very similar. You do 2 placements. The first placement is a short placement which leads up to Christmas, and then after Christmas you do a longer placement. In the short placement you're supposed to get around 50% of the timetable, and in the longer placement you get around 80% of the timetable. So right now, just at the end of the first half term, I've been observing lessons, and I've been talking to teachers about which classes that I'm going to be taking over, and now I'm just starting to plan all of my Year 9 and Year 10 lessons that I'm going to be taking over. So now for me it really is the exciting part. After 8 weeks of observations, I'm now going to be able to teach after half term and take over classes. So yeah.
Could I just ask a question about your lesson planning, Karl? Are you left to do that independently, or are you monitored while you're doing that?
So it entirely depends on the class teacher. However, there's a lot of support there. Most teachers, you will be given a scheme of work. Every school have, well, I would think that every school would have one, and you follow the scheme of work. For me, most of the teachers that the classes I'm taking over, they've showed me their PowerPoints, what they would do, and then said to me, since this is your first placement, you can either use this PowerPoint and tweak it to you, or you can do something else and try out an idea. And I think it really is about trying out ideas, for me being a trainee teacher, to see what works and see what doesn't work in the classroom. Always supported with the teachers though, whether that be through a 15-minute meeting after school, I've had an hour-long meeting after school, or it was just email contact. It's always supported through the class, because at the end of the day we are taking over the teacher's classes, so the teacher wants the class still to do well with you in charge, so they can be very encouraging and guide you along the right way.
And is the teacher in the classroom with you when you're doing your teaching?
Yes, they usually will be, yeah, and they can give you really constructive feedback as well. We have to have one observation a week from our mentor in the school. Otherwise, the teacher is usually in the classroom giving us feedback. Yeah.
Thank you. Erica?
Yes, I've got another question coming in. What are the best and worst things about being a teacher?
Oh, Helena, I think that goes to you.
The best things about being a teacher. I've got a huge list, and it's completely gone out of my head. I think it's when you're teaching a class and you have those moments where a student who's been disengaged all of a sudden joins in and wants to do well, and you see that spark happen. Just as an example, I've got a year 11 class, and there's been a couple of boys in there who haven't been forthcoming with homework, let us say, over the last year. But just last week, I introduced them to a new website that we're going to be using for doing listening and vocabulary. And they went home and they did extra homework, and for me that was just absolutely phenomenal. I was absolutely over the moon. And when you mark a book and you've set them a task, a particularly writing task, I find it happens with, and you see a student has really pushed themselves to do the best possible work that they could do, and sometimes I read work and I actually tears come to my eyes when it's so good, and because you just know how hard they've tried, and you know that how well they've wanted to do. Worst thing, I don't know. I think pressure from the media, for me, is the worst thing. The negative press that teachers are often given in various areas of the media, and therefore there are people who are willing to believe some of these negative stories that they hear in the press about teachers, and it's very hard to get a voice and say, but it's not like that.
What I'm hearing there is a real sense of professional pride, and you feel injured by that negative reporting.
Yeah.
Rene, highs and lows.
Yeah, I think Helena is completely right. It's working with students and colleagues on because one of the things that is usually the majority of colleagues are equally inspired about what they're doing as we all are, and I think that's a really nice thing, that we're actually all focusing on a common aim, and that is the development of the young people that we're working with, but also developing ourselves alongside that and helping each other. And I think that's this collaborative working that I think is one of the highs of being a teacher, and not just working within your subject area, but also coming up with new ideas and projects. And obviously, that's where sometimes possibly the negativity comes in, that the curriculum in some cases is actually stopping you, and the focus on exam results, etc., is stopping you to using this creativity that is in the staff room to develop some of these exciting projects. It is the students' achievement, and it's not about just the achievements that you've got on academic achievements. It's the personal achievements. You know, taking a Year 7 a group over to Germany and seeing them for the first time, coping with sitting down and having dinner in a hotel together with a big group, or staying for the first time overnight somewhere. It's these achievements that are worth celebrating. I think the media is definitely an issue, and I think it's not just the media, but also the general pressure that is on schools in terms of inspections, in terms of how inspections are interpreted, and this consistent element that everything you do could be next day, you could be judged on it negatively. And I think that pressure is there, and I think we need to work very closely with school leaders, policymakers, and the media to really push a much more positive picture about how the achievements and celebrate achievements that teachers do across the country.
Yes, I mean, I don't teach at school level, but at university level, I mean, we're subject to all sorts of pressures as well. But I think about one of the great things about teaching is being in the classroom with your pupils, and that's endlessly fascinating and never tires. Erica?
What opportunities are there for further development, especially in leadership?
Rene, I think it's a good one for you.
There's quite a lot at the moment available in terms of programs, but in terms of your career, I mean, if I just quickly talk through my career, I started out as a language assistant, then moved on, became head of German, then was second in the department, acting head of the faculty, then went into a senior leadership position, and then at that stage decided to move on into university. So it is possible in all kinds of ways. I think at some point you will make a decision whether you're going down much more the pastoral route or the curriculum route, like Helena is. Although obviously you don't lose your pastoral expertise, but Helena, for example, has gone down much more the curriculum one as the head of department, and others might want to go down more the pastoral route. If anyone thinks of going down primary education, I'm sure one of the first promoted posts would be nowadays the primary languages coordinator in a school, because I know primary schools are desperate in some cases to find a linguist who can lead that aspect of the curriculum in their schools.
Helena, what experience have you had in terms of leadership development? How were you helped to become the head of the modern languages at your school?
Well, I think every year we have performance management targets. I think it's really important that through your performance management, you're given the opportunity to develop your career. And when you have your performance management review every year, you meet with your head of department or your line manager, and you get the opportunity to talk about the direction in which you want your career to go, and therefore the support that the school can give you in whichever direction you want to head in.
So what I'm hearing is there's quite a lot of flexibility. I mean, classroom obviously is the center and is the main focus, but beyond that you can actually shape your career according to your own interests and talents, really.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Thank you. Erica, any more?
Yes, I think we've got one last question because we are running out of time here. So what opportunities exist for language teachers at primary level?
Could I start with you, Rene, there?
Yeah, so in terms of opportunities, because primary languages is now back on the scene as a kind of compulsory subject from Key Stage 2 onwards, so Year 3 onwards. And it's no longer the idea of, the government no longer wants the idea that you teach a bit of languages every year and you can choose. It's much more looking at the progression of a particular language. So the school will be choosing 1 or 2 languages that they then progress through from Year 3 to Year 6. And therefore, there are opportunities in terms of leading the school's provision, but also to lead very close links. And I think that's one of the challenges now, very close links to the secondary schools, and manage this transition of how do secondary schools respond to really a developed Key Stage 2 primary curriculum.
Great, thank you. Erica, you'll have to guide me here. It looks to me as if we're just about out of time. And have we time for one more question, or should I be saying goodbye?
I think we have time for one more question. The last question. What is the impact of recent curriculum changes?
Helena, would you like to take that one?
I think that it's had a big impact in the kind of, particularly the new style of GCSEs. Although we haven't had all of the specifications come out completely yet, I think for me the biggest change is in how GCSE is going to be taught, and I have to say I can only see it as positive, the way that GCSE is going to happen for the current Year 9s. I think at Key Stage 3, I think having students come in from primary school with some language knowledge is a challenge that secondary schools are still working with, but I think that we're a lot further forward than we were a few years ago, and I think that not having to start from scratch in the way that we have in the past, whilst it's a challenge, is a huge opportunity for us to really get those students in Year 7 and give them the opportunity to let the languages really fly.
Just briefly, you're smiling at the thought of the new GCSE. Just what is it in particular that excites you there?
The fact that there's no controlled assessment anymore. The controlled assessments were 60% of the grade. And therefore we seem to put a lot of emphasis on writing and speaking, and not so much emphasis on listening and reading, which are as essential as writing and speaking. And it'll be nice to go back to giving emphasis to all 4 skill areas with equal weighting.
Mm-hmm. And just finally, Rene, have you got a comment to make on this?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting developments was the EBAC and the English Baccalaureate, where languages was part of it. And when it was fully introduced a few years ago, we actually saw an increase in numbers of GCSE. As we are now bringing in the Progress 8 measure, that seems to be declining again. And I think what we really need the government to do is have a full commitment of which direction we're going, partly to have a long-term strategy about how languages should be taught and will be placed in the curriculum.
Yes, I think I would want to echo that we need a coherent strategy from primary school through secondary school right through to university, and it's moving in that direction, but there are still hiccups along the way. Erica, are we out of time?
We are indeed, so we have to stop here. I would encourage the audience to sort of watch this space, because we'll have the 3rd webinar in the series of languages and employability, which is probably going to be before Christmas or in the new year. But so I can only sort of encourage people to log on to our website, Roots into Languages, and to the web page of Roots Live to find out more. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here today and for your contributions.
And I would just like to thank all the panel members and Erica for organising this so skillfully from Southampton. The technology had us worried. Needn't have been. Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.